We are not going to permit any foreign government to intervene in our territory, especially not a foreign government's armed forces. What's wrong with them? Of course we don't accept that. We don't accept threats. But it's not President Biden's government, it's the Republicans.
That was Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. He was reacting to calls by some U.S. Republicans to send the U.S. military to shut down drug labs in Mexico. Senator Lindsey Graham said he would introduce a new bill to designate Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and authorize the use of military force against them.
We're going to unleash the fury and might of the United States against these cartels. Not to invade Mexico, not to shoot Mexican airplanes down, but to destroy drug labs that are poisoning Americans.
An abduction of 4 Americans in northeastern Mexico has renewed the focus on narco-trafficking as the U.S. heads into a presidential election next year. The case triggered a massive surge involving Mexican security forces, and 2 of the Americans were found dead, 1 wounded and 1 unharmed earlier this week. Mexican authorities say it was a case of mistaken identity by a drug cartel. Research says Mexican gangs produce much of the fentanyl consumed in the U.S. The opioid is blamed for more than 70,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. every year. Andalucia Knoll is a Mexican journalist joining us tonight from the state of Morelos in Mexico. Andalucia, the cartel responsible for the killing and kidnapping of these Americans allegedly published a letter of apology today. What do you make of that reaction?
Yes, that is correct. And it's very good that you use the word allegedly, because there's no way to prove that it really is the cartel that published it. They said that is what is circulating in the media and on social networks, and that they handed over 5 people saying that they were the ones responsible and that they themselves had not kidnapped these Americans. But that's not to say that they are not responsible for many other similar kidnappings, but largely kidnappings that are of Mexicans. There are over 110,000 Mexicans that have been kidnapped and are disappeared in the past 2 decades, and no one knows their whereabouts. This case, we see that the authorities did act very quickly to find these 4 missing Americans and found that 2 of them were killed, 1 was injured, and 1 was in good health. So it's unknown whether or not they really were the people involved, the ones that were turned over. There are at least 5 people that have been detained for their connection to this case.
The Mexican public, you hinted at it there, has been somewhat upset about the fact that the authorities were very quick to find these missing Americans, but that thousands of Mexicans have been seeking their missing loved ones in vain for years. How widespread is the sense that Mexican authorities treat cases of foreign nationals with more urgency than those of Mexican nationals?
Yes. Well, this is the case with depending on what country they are from. Here in the case of these 4 people from the United States, they acted very quickly. Tamaulipas is a place where there are tens of thousands of migrants, largely from Central America, some from the Caribbean, Asia, and Africa, and often they are kidnapped and go missing and nothing is done about them. So it is important to note that it's for some foreign nationals like the United States that the authorities do act, but they definitely do not act when they are foreign nationals, as in migrants coming from other countries who are passing through Mexico on their way to the United States. And many were forced to stay in the city of Matamoros where they were kidnapped because of the Remain in Mexico policy that was implemented during the Trump administration, where they had to wait in this very unsafe territory of Matamoros while they were awaiting asylum claims in the United States.
Getting back to Senator Graham's suggestion to send the American military after Mexican cartels, huge backlash there from AMLO. We heard it before. Can the U.S. even deploy its armed forces in the war on drugs without the host nation's consent?
No, it would be a violation of sovereignty in Mexico and could not happen. That doesn't mean that the U.S. does not deploy its troops in other ways. There was Plan Merida, which was a militarized plan many years ago in which the U.S. does fund the Mexican security authorities, army, police, etc., and give them Black Hawk helicopters and weapons to act in the war on drugs, quote unquote war on drugs, because often the people that are targeted are not actually drug cartels, but ordinary citizens. So no, the U.S. could not do it. Mexico itself has had a very militarized response to the increase in crime, drug cartels, and organized crime, which has not been effective. Since the army was put out on the streets over 15 years ago, all we have seen is an increase in violence instead of a decrease.
The DEA and the FBI are already on the ground and are, according to U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland, doing everything possible to dismantle the cartels. But they're alive and kicking. Why is that?
Yes, that is true. The DEA has operated in Mexico for decades, and there was a DEA agent who was killed many years ago in Mexico, which was a very famous case. But largely, I would say the reason is that there is impunity in over 90%, sometimes even 95% of cases. So it's not a matter of that there are not enough security forces on the street. It's that once these cases are never tried, as we saw here, in Matamoros, when people are kidnapped, there are cameras and they should be caught. They should be able to surveil and understand what is happening. But normally this happened in broad daylight. And I'm sure if they were not Americans, that it's possible they would have never been found, even though it could have been on the cameras. But then with corruption, all of a sudden the videotapes are erased. No one is arrested. There are no arrest warrants. Or if they are arrested, then it turns out that something illegal was done in their arrest, and then they are let free. So it's really that the judicial system does not work in Mexico, and there's complete impunity and also corruption between the police, the army. The army was just responsible for the murder of a group of young people on the border 2 weeks ago in Nuevo Laredo. They opened fire on a group of 5 young people. 1 person survived, and they told him that he must say that he's guilty or he will be killed, placing the blame always on the victim. So the army does not ensure that there will not be crime, and the judicial system is very weak and corrupt.
Ana Lucia Knoll, Mexican freelance journalist, joining us from Mexico tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.